Let's look at the ordinal numbers, and the ordinal numbers contain the word ord, which is of course order, and these are used to order things. You know these, I focus on the basics. So 1, 2, 3, 4 are the cardinal numbers, as you remember, but the moment we add a tiny little element to it, the dot, they change. And again, this is first the logical approach. So if it was logical, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4. But as in English, of course, we have to modify them. So the first turns into erste. Yeah, it has not much to do with ein anymore. Like in English, it's also not oneth, it is first. I haven't looked that up why that is. I will do that later for my own pleasure, but maybe you look it up if you're interested. Zweite is pretty regular. In English, you would have second, which in German makes no sense. But the Sekunde, we also have in German, which means the second of the time. Yeah, 1 minute, 2 seconds. So somehow the notion of a second of time is related to the two. I haven't done any research on that. I just realized that it's actually quite interesting if you ask me. Dritte, you see here, also is a little bit off. It's not breite, it's dritte, and we double the T for pronunciation reasons. That's a thing we do very often in German, especially in the past tense with verbs, but this is not the topic here. Vierte is regular, and basically anything else after that is also regular. So this is just to illustrate the similarity between German and English. So 5 or the 5th until the 19th is basically regular. The only exception is number 7. Yeah, it's not siebente, even though in very old German children's books you will find siebente. I came across that and I wondered whether that was used in the past, and it was. But nowadays you would say siebte. But everybody would understand you if you made the mistake or spoke a little bit outdated German. That's fine. So until between 5 and 19 there's not much of a challenge, but from 20th onwards you have one specialty, and the specialty is in orange color here. And that is of course due to pronunciation. And 20te is a tricky combination of letters for Germans, so we have to put an S in there in order to soothe our tongues and throats. So 20ste, and that's for every number until infinity after 20 or from 20 onwards. So 21ste is also worth noticing, because you might maybe think that this could be erstundzwanzigste, 20ste, excuse my high German. So, but it's of course the 21st. Well, in English, in German, it's the 21th. Yeah, I just made a beautiful mistake of using the English word. So in English, you would say 21st, the erstundzwanzigste, but we say 21ste. But then again, with the 101st, it's back to the beginnings. Erste, 101st, der 101., der 102., der 103., and so on. So you see there's a couple of little traps here, which I find just add a little bit of joy to the whole game. If everything was so logical, it would also be boring. Yeah? But you see, in principle, it's very logical. At times, certain logics just mingle with each other, and that might confuse you. Now a little grammar for relaxation. You can, of course, add articles to numbers. Numbers can be used as nouns. Yeah, die Eins, eine Eins. The numbers 1 bis 6, 1 to 6 in school mean school grade. So if you get your grade paper at the end of the year, there's a couple of school grades on there, on notes, we say in German Noten. And our ideal grade would be the Eins, because you are number 1, it's the top position. And the 6 is the worst. Yeah, that means you're a complete failure. And let's not talk about the school system, but this is simply what we use. If your daughter or your son comes, hey Papa, ich habe eine Eins, yeah, they possibly want to be praised for it. If they say ich habe eine Sechs, they possibly just need a hug. So pay attention to that. In Poland, they turned that around for whatever reason. Yeah, if you want to be you want to be the first, not the sixth. So the ordinal numbers can of course also be used with articles on their own or with a noun. That has the only consequence of that will be whether you capitalize it or not, which is not relevant at this point. So der Erste could be the first, yeah, of the month, could be the first person in a race. Yeah, Michael war der Erste, he was the first, like in English, not much. But it can have any gender, yeah, depending on what it relates to. If it relates to a masculine noun or thing, then it needs to be der, neuter das, feminine die. Could also be in plural, die Ersten, the first ones, die Ersten Menschen, the first human beings, all possible. And despite being illogical, you could even use it with a first, a second, a third. Yeah, ein erstes Mal. Es gibt immer ein erstes Mal. There's always a first time. So it's basically like in English, but I like this nuance. And you would use it mainly for two things, especially in A1, A2. Later levels also, like for dates. Yeah, in A1 exams you have to talk about dates a lot, or you have to at least understand the dates and make appointments. And this is a little bit of an advanced example, but I have a whole masterclass on my YouTube channel about dates, and I recommend you take a look at it. And I also possibly repeat the ordinal numbers there. That's pretty lovely. In German, you could say the 3rd 10th. Yeah. So, which simply means the 3rd of October, because October is the 10th month, at least in German. There's other countries where that's not the case. And the 3rd is the 3rd day of the 10th month. And if you say, let's meet on the 3rd of October, yeah, and so that would be, wir treffen uns am 3.10. And you see that dritte now kind of functions as an adjective and gets an ending as any other adjective would. And Zehnte as well, even though it's capitalized. So these are beautiful things to explore at one point, but not in this masterclass. Floors seem to be very important. People always like to ask, hey, what floor are you living on? Or if the Amazon deliverer person comes and says, hey, what floor are you on? They would ask you, in welchem Stock are you? Or in welcher Etage? So whether you use Stock or Etage for, how do you call that, floor of the house, that depends a little bit on where you're living or where you're coming from. I would preferably say Stock. I come from northern Germany, or the southern part of northern Germany, to make it more complicated. And therefore I would use Stock. And that's related to how people built houses in the past, the nice ones with the Fachwerk, which means timber frame. And Etage is a little bit more like French. Yeah, you can also use it if you are closer to that language. And it comes from stage, or is related to stage and estate. It has to do with standing. So basically, the etage that you're living in, Etage, is where you are staying, where you are standing around and waiting for your delivery. And you see the grammar also needs to be adapted. Yeah, they have different genders. Stock is der Stock and Etage is die Etage. And it's pronounced French. Well, a mixture of French and German, because in French it would be bel étage, but here it would be étage. Yeah, every language kind of makes their own variant of things. So that is what you really need the ordinal numbers for. And as I said, the dates, they require a whole masterclass on their own, because there's quite some complexity and beauty in it. Now, Bruchzahlen. Bruch means break. So if something breaks, you have several fractions. And so Bruchzahlen are basically fractions. Yeah. And this is a very popular one, a half. And in German, a half is einhalb. Remember, the B at the end turns into P. It even has a name. It's called Auslautverhärtung, which means the laut that is at the end gets harder. Yeah. So einhalb, and if you turn this into a noun, the half, you get die Hälfte. So it's a bit irritating at times. People mix this up. Keep that in mind. Yeah. And I give you an example in a minute. Just want to run you through the most common Bruchzahlen, fractions. If you add one, a whole one to a half one, you get einhalb. Very logical, right? It should be 1,5, but that's a mouthful, and Germans cut off the eins, the S. So it's 1,5, einhalb. And you hear ein, I have to start again. Germans don't like that, so they look for something that has a little bit more flow to it, which is anderthalb. Anderthalb. I'm not sure whether it's related to the word under, other, but from what I've read quickly, the under is related to the number 2, which kind of is logical. Another is at least a second person, and of course there might be others. So the Germans most of the time use anderthalb, yeah, and an example is about to come. 1/3 in German is also 1/3. It's ein Drittel. Dritt, or you see in the Drittel, you see that we have the ordinal number, Dritte, but we add the L because Tell here is likely related to, or basically short for Teil, which means part. So ein Drittel is the third part of a whole, which is indicated by the one on top of that line. Yeah. So how would you then say 1/4, which in English you very likely will call rather a quarter, quattro. Yeah. Maybe you can write it in the chat. I give you a second to digest this because I'm rushing through this. But mainly because it's basics and you can just pause the video at any time to digest all this. Yeah, so bear with me. This is really also not for you to remember it eternally. This is really to give you an insight, an overview, so that later on you can invest time in internalizing, memorizing what you want to memorize and still have to. So see this as an inspiration like any other masterclass of mine. Viertel, I love that. Yeah, ein Viertel. I turned off the capitalization here, or capitalize every letter. So as there is an ein in front of it, it is capitalized with the exception of einhalb. I actually have to admit einhalb. I would have to look up how to write this. Yeah, I wrote it like this. It felt natural, so I would say this is how you write it. My intuition is pretty good, but the halb is not capitalized. That's the only difference between the Tell and the Drittel and Viertel. The reason might be that the Tell at the end of Drittel and Viertel and Fünftel and Sechstel and Siebtel is based on a noun called Teil, and that's a very likely the explanation of why there's a difference in writing. And I just wanted to point out that this is based on the ordinal numbers, yeah, because you always have the Dritte, Vierte, Fünfte, Sechste in Drittel, Viertel, Fünftel, Sechstel. Now a couple of examples. So if you are hungry, you order ein halbes Hähnchen bitte, and you see you have to use adjective endings. Beautiful stuff. Adjective endings, everybody loves those, and if you struggle with them, Smarter German is your savior, because we deal with them from almost the first lesson onwards in a very intuitive manner. So ein halbes Hähnchen. Chen always means small, so you don't get a full rooster, you get a small rooster, and of the small rooster you only want half. So ein halbes Hähnchen bitte. Yeah, and you also see the gender of Hähnchen, or of any word ending in Chen at the end of halb. Type it in the chat. What's the gender of Hähnchen? What does the ES indicate? Always. And if you have siblings and they have futter night, so they're a bit envious about not getting enough of the schnitzel on the table, they say, hey, I want half of that. I want half of that. In German, you would say, I want the half, yeah, of that. Abhaben kind of means to have something of something, yeah. So, ich möchte die Hälfte abhaben, I want to have half of what you have. So this is how I would use halb and Hälfte. 1.5. Remember how it's pronounced? Which word do we use for 1.5? Just type it. I want to see whether you remember the word after just seeing it for a few seconds. I have to give a little update on the Hähnchen gender. 1.5. That's okay. That's the official number. So before I move on to the solution of 1.5, Hähnchen, any word ending in chen, like Mädchen, or what else is there? Chen, Kindchen, or Tässchen, Tischchen. Yeah, I can put it almost in anything. Chen makes it small. Any word ending in chen is neuter, indicated by the s, halbes. But again, this is adjective declension. Just wanted to check whether you're familiar with this. Anderthalb, this is the word I was looking for. So we meet in 1.5 hours. So like in English, 1.5 hours, not in 1.5 hour. So if you have anderthalb, it's more than one, and therefore it's plural. No matter whether it's just a fraction more than one. So you have to use Stunden. But in 1,5 Stunden or in 1,5 Stunden, whatever is your preference. Nothing wrong with 1,5. It's just Germans are more the flow type of people. So a quarter, in German, you know from time, so a quarter of an hour. Do you know the word for a quarter of an hour? Brötchen, danke für das example, lovely. A quarter of an hour, how do you write this? A 8:15. So it's the same as this, right? So you don't use the mathematical writing, you just use the word for it. Yeah, Viertel, and it's the quarter, so therefore Viertel is a noun and it's capitalized. So here I actually wrote in normal script, so you can see it's capitalized. Yeah. A quarter could also be a city quarter. So Stadtviertel, das Stadtviertel. So it's also used for that. So in Germany, you know, there's plenty of spies who want to steal all the secrets of smarter German. I always make if someone applies for a job here, I make the spy test and see whether they're proper Germans or not. And I stole that from military intel. And what they do is they let the spies that claim to be German say these numbers out loud. And you can try this now. I would like to see what, you just try this, I cannot hear it. Yeah? You can, if you feel like it, you can type the number out in the chat and we will see. I give you 2 numbers. Start with this one. So write it down as you would say it, as you would speak it. It's easier to write it down, but say it out loud wherever you are. It's a beautiful, beautiful number, and I'll say it out loud in a second for you. If you can say that number, you go through as a German. Just a few more seconds, just for you. Really try it. Try to say this number. You might not be able to if you haven't looked at the 1,000 and the millions. I skipped those because you have to earn those first. And if you have been there, it's very close. Million, 1,000, thousands. Use the English words, it's almost German. So this number is 9 Millionen, and listen to how I say millions, Millionen. It's a very little nin. 9.999.999. Komma 99. Let me repeat that. So beautiful. 9.999.999,99 oder 0,99. That's also legit. Another number for you. Try this one again. Just for fun. If you say that's not for me, then it's fine. Just enjoy the looks of it. Yeah, not bad, David. I'll say a word to that in a second. Let me finish this number first. So 6.666,666,66. And you hear as I say comma, you wrote Punkt, David, right? Punkt is American. The Punkt is very irritating for Germans because we would put the Punkt where you put a comma, and we put a comma where you would put a Punkt. So this is always a pain writing invoices to different countries. I'm not sure actually what I do. I possibly improvise every time, but it's important in your bank account, because if you put the comma in the wrong place, instead of giving me 666,666.66, you would very likely give me, what is that, $666 million, which is a nice mistake for me, but you don't want that. So it's very important that you get the point and the comma clear. That's actually the most important part of this stuff. Yeah, but these are not too difficult numbers, I hope. Okay, so you passed the spy test. It's okay. I just wanted to expose you to the possibilities here. And one thing you need to keep in mind, as soon as you have more than one, you have the plural. So you see in the chat the two examples David and Mohammed wrote. They both wrote million, 1 million. But it's more than one, so it has to be millionen, en. Very important.